You have the forum to discuss it. So we're both in session 4. All right. Would you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Be seated. So, council and P&Z, thank you again for making yourselves available for this meeting that was hopefully, I hope to have it worked out when we had the last regular council meeting 2 weeks from tomorrow. I mentioned that I would like to have a meeting on the update of the draft language of the STR ordinance amendment that we've been working on for many, many months. And of course, we have several people signed up to speak on this. And we have several who want their comments added to the record from written comments. The theme of the comments, certainly the ones written, and I suspect the ones that are here to speak, are opposed to any further, appear to be opposed pretty generally to any further STR amendments to the ordinance. So before I start the process of calling on people to speak, and I've just been handed all these, I will limit you specifically to 3 minutes because there are a bunch of people. But let me just make a few comments before we do. And it may make a difference to what we said. First of all, there was a general email going around. I figure probably to all the council members. We don't deliberate with each other outside of meetings, so I'm assuming you got the same emails I did, and they all seem to be pretty simple stories, because they all said much the same thing. I want to correct the record on some things, ladies and gentlemen, please. This meeting was properly posted as required by law. We have a 72-hour posting requirement, and it was posted by 5:30 on last Friday. This day was picked because it was an open day as soon as P&Z and council could arrange, following the close of the regular Texas legislative session, which was a key component of our continuing discussion. At the last regular council meeting, 2 weeks from tomorrow, as I said, I asked, and when we get to the section on future agenda items, if we could arrange another joint session with council and P&Z to get an update on the language that had been written, because I know that our legal representative at the city attorney's office has been working on it, and there have been staff comments going back and forth, but it had been April the 18th since we had last met, so I wanted us to have an update. And it seemed to work well with the end of the Texas legislative session, because there will be some issues that they're either deciding or working on that may impact what we discuss. It has been 2 months since we met, and after we will put in proper form what we discussed. And so this meeting is the next step in discussing specific provisions of the amendment, and we'll go forward with one, maybe more joint meetings to craft the amendment. And then the council can decide on further tweaks in an open regular meeting before passing it for public hearings. So we're a long way from passing this amendment ordinance. So just want to make that clear to everybody. The word somehow went out that there was going to be a vote on the amendments tonight, and then it was done stealthily and hopefully without people being aware and picking a day that people couldn't come. That's all false. Then the final draft will be up for approval by the time we've finished with our P&Z consultation, our legal consultation, our council consultation, 2 public hearings, and it still can go up or down. The final draft will be up for approval, must receive 2 appropriately posted public hearings before a final vote and passage. So this is merely the next step, maybe halfway through, I'm not sure. But we'll have more reading on that by the time we finish tonight. So that is any part of your comments tonight. I will take that under advisement. One of the things that I read a lot in the email responses was take the recommendations of the task force, the SDR task force that council allowed me to put together last fall. We started in November and met November, December, and January for 90 days, several times, several hours. Gave that report, the full report of the task force, to the council and of course to the public on April 4th. The final report from the SDR task force was presented on April 4th and showed a lot of agreement on many of the specific issues that we discussed over the 90 days. But the council was presented at that time with 16 specific issues for which there were 2 views represented by members of the task force. So it will be up to the council to decide which of the 2 options it prefers on each one, or the third option is not to include either one. Those views for which there is disagreement in the council will be voted on separately, and a 3-vote majority will prevail. And once we get to the point where we're not convening with B&Z and the council pocket, or even in the joint meetings, I encourage council to state your preferences, make your case, disagree, agree. This is the time to do that. The draft amendment is exactly what that means. It is a draft to be debated. My hope is still that we will be able to find an acceptable compromise on each one of those disagreements that will be unanimous. So here's the final thing. I encourage the council and PNC to focus only on those provisions as we go forward tonight and further. I encourage the council and the PNC to focus only on those provisions of an amendment that fits one of these 2 criteria. Number 1, we have already demonstrated that we have the capacity to effectively enforce. Or 2, we have a hard, written, detailed, and time-based plan to create that capacity. We learned that it's difficult to have an ordinance that many people feel like is unenforceable. So those are the 2 criteria I encourage us to consider as we debate all of these specific things. That we have already demonstrated we have the capacity to effectively enforce, or that we have a hard written, detailed, and time-based plan to create that capacity by the time we pass it. All right. I will quickly note those that have submitted written.
Mayor?
Yes.
First, I just want to be clear, since several P&Z members had to recuse themselves, is there a reason why Councilmember Briley is not having to recuse himself?
That'd be a question for our city attorney, and I'm assuming y'all have discussed.
We have, and I would like to comment. Thank you for bringing that up. May I make a comment?
Sure.
Okay.
I'd like to have Nick weigh in on that first.
Sure.
Well, I think is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. I think what you're asking about is if a person on P&Z or the city council is an owner or operator of a short-term rental, can they legally participate in discussion and voting? And the answer is under Chapter 171 of the Texas Local Government Code and under the City of Fredericksburg Ethics Ordinance. They're required to recuse themselves and to participate. Participation means basically talking and certainly no vote. So those types of conflicts required by law should be declared prior to the beginning of discussions of an item for which the conflict exists, and it requires the member to file an affidavit with the city secretary reflecting that conflict. So that's how the law works, if that answers your question.
That's.
Yes, we cannot hear you. Yeah, I can't hear back.
Your piece of say and points moved. This room is difficult to hear.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. How's that? Can you hear me? I'm pretty close. Chapter 171 of the Texas Local Government Code and the City of Fredericksburg Ethics Ordinance require any public official who owns or operates in a short-term rental to declare that conflict of interest exists prior to discussion on the matter, and they are not allowed to participate in discussion. And that conflict has to be declared prior to the discussion beginning, and requires the member to file an affidavit with the city secretary describing the conflict. Under the city's ethics ordinance, the city council enforces that ordinance, and any violations can result in censure or suspension of the official that may violate it. Under Texas state law, the conflict of interest law, penalties are a Class A misdemeanor, which is up to 1 year in jail and up to $4,000 fine. So they're very serious penalties for violation. So that's how it works. Any other questions I'll try to answer.
Have you filed a notice?
Yes, yes, I have. And Mick and I have had extensive conversations today. Sorry, can you hear me now? Okay, so I am Randy Briley. I do own a short-term rental. I own a 18-acre cabin in my backyard. My wife and I operate that. So for that reason, under legal counsel and under penalties, pretty severe penalties, I will need to refuse. But I do want to voice my constituents' reflections to me over the weekend. So, Mayor, you touched on a few things, but I'll hit them anyways. Today is a national and a state holiday. This is not an amendment. This is a sweeping new STR ordinance, which replaces version 2018 and April 2022 is gone at that point. There are no actions tonight. No vote will be taken. As of this morning, when I had some conversations, planning and zoning hadn't received copies of this yet. The general public has not had a chance to review this properly. It came out, I think, on a Friday within the proper time frame, Mr. Mayor. So I have requested to formally postpone this meeting pending my legal team's review of the Texas State statute of conflict of interest. And I put that forward. And I believe that the people that have had to step off, whether planning and zoning or myself, have the greatest body of knowledge as it relates to short-term rentals, but we can use that to help benefit the city. So that is my statement, and I appreciate the time.
Right.
Are you moving to postpone that?
That's my request.
Yeah.
Holiday.
You're free to make a motion. You're a duly elected official.
I'm assuming you're gonna vote on that, but
Yeah, it'll be called for a vote.
Somebody got to second it first.
Right.
so I made the motion, I made the request.
Okay. So I have a motion to postpone this meeting until when?
3 more business days.
Until 3 more business days. All right? Yes, it can be posted. It would have to be, it'd have to be by, 6 o'clock or so, 6 o'clock on Thursday. Do I have a second to that motion? All right, the motion fails for lack of second.
Thank you.
All right, then I will enter into the record the comments from the written record. Jeffrey Moran opposed. Several specifics: loss of transferability, disapprove R2 density requirements. I'm not dismissing these comments, folks, but for the sake of time, some of these are very lengthy, and they will be entered into the record and will be available. What do? Do you post these?
I can post.
Okay, I'm gonna ask that you post them for people to read them. They're all very similar. Michael Coyne, a deep concern about the proposed changes. Wish had been given more time to read, see, and think. Randy Heddleston of Fredericksburg strongly opposed new proposals as related, specifically parking. why not just live with the current, ordinance? I'm sorry, I have a loud voice, but I. Tricia Smoot Devlin. Lives in Kerrville. City of Fredericksburg profits primarily and immensely from weekend, anyone driving, etc. We too are small business owners who are faced with losing businesses. Unclear and discouraging why. Looking at these. Megan Malmberg in Fredericksburg wish to protest. Yeah, looks like some template response here, same issues, loss of transferability, density, etc. I'm not dismissing it, I'm just saying that they're very common. Many of the emails have the same points and even some of the exact same language. Paul Wong, ditto, from Fredericksburg. Luke Sanders from Fredericksburg heavily opposed the creation of sunset laws and the transfer of permits. Okay, full name. I don't have a name on this one.
It's at the bottom here.
No, it says full name.
Keep going.
No, you go to the bottom. Report. It's Mr.
Oh, Matt Durrett. Yes. All right. Matt Durrett, who, does he live here? He lives in New Braunfels. Or he lives in Fredericksburg. Yeah. I know. And opposed and taking me to task for keep bringing this up. Yeah. Derek Christ, from Fredericksburg. Same language about protesting main loss of transferability. Kenneth Catherine Ketchum from Fredericksburg. Specifically opposed to transferability, loss of option. Eric Hoffman, same 5 points, disapprove R2 density, disapprove of restrictions of on-street parking, disapprove of discrimination in lighting restrictions, and disapprove of inspections. Rob Cooksey, lengthy, so trying to hit high points here. Continued attacks on property owner rights and now evident attempts to divide our community. He lives in Houston, or his address is listed in Houston. And finally, the last one I have noted, submitted as a written is, yes, Beth Ann McDonald, protest. One major problem is the loss of permit transferability by a new owner. Ask that you vote against. Okay. There will be no vote tonight, but those are the written comments. All right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with the ones that have signed up to speak. You're here. I will, as I say, be pretty strict about the 3-minute limit. Catherine Jeffrey, if you will, please state your name and that you are a citizen, a resident of Fredericksburg, or not.
I'm Catherine Jeffrey, and I actually live outside of the city limits, but I have lived in Fredericksburg before. I work here, I'm a realtor, and have been a realtor for the past 16 years. Served on the board of realtors, president twice, and the past 3 times. I'm also a member of the National Executive Association of Realtors, and part of our mission is to fight for property rights. And so that's why I'm talking to you today. I just want to explain a little bit real estate market, why if your point to get rid of transferability is to create more housing, you probably don't have to worry about that because national expansion is happening. COVID has created kind of a perfect storm. We saw the highest demand ever for lodging, or for rentals booming, income was booming, and interest rates were low. So it became a great investment for people. We saw a high demand for purchase. COVID is over. Rentals are down, and our sales are down. The demand for STR market has deflated. In fact, we have 8.5 months supply of them right now for sale. Prices are declining. In the first half of 2022, they were going for about $525 a square foot. In the first half of this year, it's down to $430 a square foot. Days on market is more than twice what it was last year. And even, with the decrease in pricing, the FTRs just are not making sense financially for buyers anymore. The revenue is down as much as 26%, and expenses like supplies and labor and taxes are going up. So this has led to an increase in inventory. Fewer are selling, prices have decreased, and there's now more on the market. This is naturally opening the market to families to occupy these properties. Let natural attrition and supply and demand do their job. We don't need to limit property rights and risk a long legal battle that ultimately will cost all the citizens of Fredericksburg. So I ask you to not go through with this, and I'm kind of shocked and surprised that it's back up these kind of sweeping changes, because that's not what I understood that the task force had recommended.
Belinda McDonald.
Good evening, I'm Belinda McDonald and a resident of Fredericksburg. I'm here to speak with you about item 3. Mayor, councilpersons, and family members, thank you all for your service to our community. I was a member of the mayor's SDR task force. I was happy to serve on the task force in the spirit of fostering a positive and multiple outcome. Our mayor made it clear during the task force process that our group had no voting power on the resulting recommendations, that they were visible. Resulting report the mayor gave previously was largely a summary of the discussion we had as approved, rather than the mayor's direction. So now we have a clearer picture of our mayor's direction for STRs in Fredericksburg. It's a simple point. First, eliminate the section 5.401. This gives what we call grandfathering to STRs and has language for non-conforming use. That means everything that was previously permitted for 2022 no longer has any rights privileges according to that non-conforming use. This allows STRs to meet the same impossible use standards of the vague and virtually impossible to meet regulations and citations. Even more concerning for me is it allows hundreds of STR owners to lose their STR permits in farmland scooters. See the chart in section 5, 4.4, general regulations. It requires the owners to go over the same board adjustment to receive a special exception. Begin with parameters so subjective anyone. This is not what was in the spirit of the STR task force or the spirit of what the mayor led us to believe. I'm disappointed to be in there, and I'm more disappointed to be so many sections that have no bearing on anything. There's a saying that says, when fear knocks, answer the door with faith. I'm not afraid. I've been through much worse. I'm more concerned. But I do think that we have elected, and those that we've elected that serve our community and in our government. You are under no obligation to approve any part of this ordinance. I have faith that you will all do the right thing through this progress on this and ask the right questions, and I ask you to just simply say no to this group. Thank you.
Cynthia Nelson.
Hi there, I'm Cynthia Nelson. I live in Austin, but I have deep roots here in Fredericksburg. My great-great-grandfather ordered a vote in the 1860s and was the second school teacher and, was very involved in this setting up this community. I've come here all my life and, at family reunions, I'm the president of Jacob Bird Foundation. So, I feel like I have some stake here. He came here because he wanted freedom. And today, we're talking about taking freedoms away from people who own property and who want to use it the way they want to use it. I bought a house here so that eventually my husband and I could retire here. And we're using that property now as a vacation rental, but, you know, eventually we'd like to have it so that we can live here. And, you know, if something happens and I want to pass that house to my children and they want to be able to use it as a short-term rental, then they have to be able to, you know, say we retire here, we live here for a few years, and then we pass it to our children, they won't be able to use it in the same way. So they won't have that history or that foundation here in this community. We purposely bought a house that was in an R2 area because I felt like that having it in the commercial zone was an appropriate place for a short-term rental. It's not bothering anyone. Everything around me is either there's a doctor's office on one side, there's a short-term rental on the other side, there's a church across the street. They're free. You know, if people at my house make noise, which I think that they do, they aren't bothering anyone because they're not, you know, next to Omaha. And I thought that that was more appropriate. And then when I read these ordinances, it's showing me that you're trying to restrict in the R2 area, which doesn't make sense to me. It's already been restricted in the historic district where I'm at. And now it's going to be further restricted that is not transferable. And, you know, it doesn't make sense. In the ordinance, I was reading that, you know, you can't have lights on after 10 o'clock. Well, does the church next door to me have to turn their lights? Does the Pioneer Museum have to turn their lights off at 10 p.m.? Those are my neighbors. But I'm the only person that's restricted. I'd like to convince that the founders of this community be able to continue. Thank you.
Courtney Munson.
Good evening, my name is Courtney Hunt, and I manage several properties here in Fredericksburg, Vacation Rentals, and I also represent Country Real Estate Group. This company has given me the opportunity to broaden my horizons and find a career path that not only I learned, but Fredericksburg is such a wonderful town, and part of the reason why I love it is so my performance and not get rich history and tourism opportunities that drive people here to enjoy it as much as we do. From a property management perspective, the changes being proposed are going to have a negative effect to our opportunities within the city of Rich. From a real estate perspective, we're limited finding opportunities to invest in property which directly will only back into our community. In addition, the enforcement of rules contained by the city has posed itself to be ludicrous and incredibly difficult to meet as requirements. All I ask is that you consider all outcomes to these proposed changes and better solutions for the bill.
Tim Heddleston.
Hello, and I was in Fredericksburg as of a few weeks ago. However, I've been overseeing the taxes in the city of Richmond for quite a while. So that's probably Then this is Fredericksburg. I was forgetting what the streets, it's in the amendment until I heard it was in your eye about how you follow the letter of the law and see that needed is, because I don't believe that the group here is taking a open, honest approach to discussing and solving these problems. Heard earlier, you said that all of those students were opposed to amendments. I'll make it clear, I'm not opposed to amendments. I would like to work with the collective community to solve these problems. You're reading. The city is special. It's going through tremendous growth and realizing tourism, and the STR group is a part of that solution, not a part of the problem. But I do not feel like this group, having watched Kell for the last 5 years, has been interested in solving problems or even working with the community in an honest way. Instead, a lot of divisions are being created. That's unnecessary. I don't want the city to go in the wrong direction. There's all many different opinions about what the right direction is. And this growth is going to continue to happen. We're not going to solve the problem unless there's honest, open conversation and genuine energy put towards solving those problems. It has been frustrating to watch these sessions over the years and hear people voice the same frustration over and over again. I would just leave ask to focus on progress with all in mind continuing to create efficiencies.
Todd Plunk.
Thank you. My name is Todd Plunk. I'm the president. I'm reminded of the last time I was in this room and expressing my concern for the open house after council member Kathy O'Neill resigned, only to be met in very complicated remarks from the mayor and secretary of state. I'm probably those cases created and back here, discussing a topic that's already been discussed. So, frustrated that the SDR topic is again being snuck back on to agendas. I'm against any people restrictions that will prevent the transfer of the policy of permanent use and order along the available property. I'm excited to hear what the task force recommendation came out with, how we're going to work through those recommendations going forward. That's all I need to say.
Eric Smallbach. Eric Smallbach. Oh, written comments sent by separate mail. Okay, sorry, I missed that. Tina Hambley. Is this this is another? Oh, I see. Okay. Were these given to you tonight, Shelley? These speaker cards, because they're fully written out.
We received those after the deadline, Mr.
Okay. Very, very lengthy, and I'm sure well thought out. Ordinances are long, obviously opposed. The amendment to the ordinance is provided with short and inadequate notice. The restriction on transferability is problematic. The maximum minimum stay provision is problematic. Other text amendments create issues. Exterior string and floodlights. Quoting what he says. Opposed to text revisions. And Philip, is it Shula? Okay, opposing all action pertaining to any changes to the STR permit or amendment. Catherine, is it Cheryl? Sherrock?
Hello. I'm Kathy Straw. I am a local here. I have 2 B&Bs here. My family has businesses here. The big support of the community. First of all, I would ask that you really listen to what people are saying. I know that these changes are hard. We're trying to navigate them, but people are showing up because they're scared. So this is what I wrote. So I practice real estate here. Most of my clients, about 90% are going to be investors, specialized investment properties here. I think the B&B market probably better than anyone you can talk to. Every client that I've helped find love our community. They want to be a part of the community. They enjoy visiting it, and they have just enough money to take it out. They're not coming in here and paying cash, or they're getting a loan and investing here, so they can come here with their families, their friends, and enjoy it. And they supplement that income 5 years ago to make the monthly payments. They love visiting our community. They essentially are wonderful people who care about our community, who feel a part of it, and will be financially devastated if you guys sunset their permit or the county transfer. They bought something that they believe they could earn additional income for their family, typically at the top of their market and the budget. And will now have to sell less than they bought it for. So essentially their currency goes from $80 to maybe 50 cents a dollar. I personally have 2 B&Bs. Constantly making sure that it looks nice. We provide nice local treats for our my family is winery here, my house is but occasionally we'll bring Texas wine bottles over there for them to enjoy. I keep good rapport with our neighbors. One of them is their whole life is 94, but it's left. Never had a complaint. Ever. I realize that there are bad apples in this batch, but for the most part, Airbnb brings a lot for our citizens, for future residences, for future businesses, and tax dollars for the community. Short-term rentals also allow for people who may not be able to afford a hotel room because their price is insane to be high here, to split individual bedrooms with family, or be able to bring their whole family here and split a house. I have kids who rent an Airbnb 3 rooms that are running multiple services. I understand why you guys have this here. I absolutely do. I know that you guys want to preserve the community. But the way that you're doing it feels confusing, upsetting, and honestly a little bit scary for people as myself, as well as my buyers that I'm trying to guide. On a real estate front, since having short-term rentals, the market has not become affordable. Prices without permits have gone down. They're still not in a range of affordability for essential community workers, nurses, cops, teachers. In my opinion, what we need to focus on, and what the town should constantly be figuring out and working on, is where can we get these people? Can we put high modular homes in the public land? How can we get neighborhoods here with land that are inexpensive enough and builders that would work with us to get 250 to 300,000 houses? These are the line items that we need to work on.
Ms. Rock, I need you to wrap it up. You've reached your limit.
Okay, this is my last one. Mayor Cooper, you discussed finding a compromise in the beginning of this meeting. Is the compromise not already happened? Is it not that you already passed? Essentially, I'm saying voting no to financially damaging local residents like myself. We're just trying to build very high energy 3.5 room side. Focus on rural housing plans. Thank you very much.
Stephanie Hodges.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Stephanie Hodges. I am a budgeting director. I'm also proud to say that my mother was born here. I will have to mention for cozy. What that means is that we take care of houses that have been families for generations. And this agenda, we want to have with people's family, homes. And so I just wanted to say that I chose, the agenda, because continuing to take care of historical antique homes, you know, the ins and outs of the property, the respect, and take care of the maintenance prices, urgency behind everything to keep them safe, and working condition and in mid condition. So we're not allowing them to be permitted to the next owner, but also will let these houses. It'll be a huge, it affects family legacy. So my point is that we, as a property management company, we care for these homes, we care for the people that come out of them, we care for the property, homeowners. So I am.
Nancy Herndon.
Hi, my name is Nancy Herndon. I'm a proud resident of Fredericksburg. I'm sorry I had to do this, because I'm not here to just open this meeting. Mayor, council, planning and zoning members. I'm disappointed to find out that 5 individuals have been silenced on this matter before us tonight. My understanding is that they have been told that they are not allowed to speak or vote on topics for any SDRs simply because they own SDRs. The law in the state of Texas does not support this demand. If anybody needs, I brought a copy of chapter 171 of the local government code. Chapter 171, local government code, conflict of interest, exactly what you were speaking about. And I'm only going to read this one little part because if an action, meaning a vote, on the matter will result in special economic effect on the business that is distinguishable from the effect on the public. That's the main line we're looking at here. I've spoken with 2 attorneys, they both brought this to my attention. Their votes would affect all property owners in the city of Fredericksburg, not just themselves. What I'm speaking about, people with influence who use themselves. Their votes affect all, not just them. It is understandable that they should not be allowed to vote on an issue or a matter of board or city council that only pertains to them, specifically their personal business or their real property. However, the law does not require that they recuse themselves when the matter affects a larger population. These elected and appointed representatives that you are choosing to silence represent a large portion of residents of the city of Fredericksburg, residents that have every right to be heard and represented. If you continue on this path, that you are silencing their knowledge base, their expertise, their life experiences, and most importantly, their concern for the future of Fredericksburg. Mayor, I ask that you and this body follow the law of the state of Texas and retract your demand for recusal of all 5 individuals. They know and they love this city. Please trust them to do what is right for the future of Fredericksburg. By the way, lights off at 10 p.m. is a severe safety issue.
Do y'all want to get further clarification from our city attorney at this point, or do you want to move on? Okay,
Any comments?
If you'd like, I'd make a comment.
all right, Mr. McCain.
I'm unaware of a Texas municipal lawyer that would have a contrary opinion to what I could deliver to these members.
Speak up, speak
I
up.
said I'm unaware of a Texas municipal lawyer that could have a different opinion too about the application of the state law than I've given to these members because no contrary argument exists. I will reiterate the penalty for violation of Article 171, Chapter 171 is up to a year in jail, up to a $4,000 fine or both. And so if the members wish to put themselves at risk for that, even though there are convictions every year in Texas for that, conflict of interest law, they're certainly welcome to do so. All we can do is advise them of what the statute said. And that's what we've done. Any other questions that we have to ask from my clients?
Is it Moises Sanchez?
Yes.
My name is Municipal. I'm on another perspective, I work on the cozy, I'm a long-term management. I've been with Cody almost 2 years. On our side of the point on this, is that we're the workers, you walk your field, you walk your neighborhoods, and we take care of a lot of properties. But it's not just properties that we take care of, we take care of our neighbors that are adjacent to our Airbnbs or rentals. When you give us an opportunity to work, we come here to work. We're not only because we have to, we might come into the town for this community, live in Fredericksburg. This company is not just a big company. Cozy is a family-owned company. And they have standards, and you know, we take care of each other. And we have frequent meetings. You know what's happening with each team member. Something goes on, like they say, things will go wrong. Sometimes they do, but we address it. We don't go out when we have neighbors. We don't have, if there's a complaint, they come, we address it. Okay, we're gonna figure it out and do something different. That's always a top priority, is to always bring some kind of a solution to the problem. And that's what we do here. I have my son is here with me tonight, and you know, I like to put him in college. You know, and someday he's going to get married, and I want him to live in an area out here or Kerrville, or what this company provides us for this work. Not just, you know, I hear and I keep hearing the repeating that's great, you know, the different issues, but us as workers that we respect the city, we respect the law, we market here, we fill up here, everything we do here, we help this community as well as it's helping us. We need to grow, and there's a lot of room all over this town, for all of us. If we need to oppose this law, because workers like myself, and there's others that closing hires, and we go through all of them, and in saying that is that, with taking away this opportunity of down the line, take our income rate, it's taking the future away from your children as well. People that are already here like myself, we really get to know your town, we really get to know, we respect it. You want people here that not just want to come in and work and make you clock in and clock out. It's but they respect the whole environment, the whole area, and that's what we're all about. Thank you very much.
Colonel Michael Troop, retired.
Fine. So yes, early retired Mike Drew. I grew up here, fourth generation, here in Fredericksburg. Spent almost 3 decades abroad serving. And when I got the chance to come back to Texas and look at this town I grew up in, how vibrant and uniquely charming it still was, and how exciting it was to live here, I was going to leave, but I was coming back to it. In good ways, and then some not so good ways. I understand that. But to me, it seems that there's way more good than bad. And to me, it seems that adding more regulation, adding more processes and procedures, and forcing our law enforcement to enforce things that just don't seem to make sense. Taking away priority from enforcing other laws that affect us a lot greater than street parking, and the stacking of these violations one on top of each other just doesn't seem like a good way to use our funds. But particularly, when I looked at this, paragraph A denies the ability to rent for 30 days. Well, I needed that when I came back here. I know a lot of other professionals need that to come here because we're building something new and something better. Why do we have to enforce that? And I already mentioned the parking on the street. I don't understand how that's gonna enforce. Is everybody who visits Fredericksburg gonna have to have a parking permit? If you designate themselves as an FDR resident or not? Chief, I don't know, is that a good way to spend your officer's time? And then. The crime data that supports the things like for the trash and the brush and the lighting. Do we really have a problem statement that shows the data behind why that's such a big issue that it needs to be here? If so, I'd like to see it. And then, it seems to me like all these actions that I've followed over the last few months after coming back to this community seem to be pointed and really almost weaponized towards those of us who have an STR. They do. My old family ranch house was renovated, and it's amazing. I can't wait to build it. Be part of this community permanently here. And then the recusal. It looks like there's differing opinions, and sir, I understand you're pretty clear on the law. Yeah. We're giving up a lot of knowledge and expertise in this body by doing that. And I feel like history tells us that making decisions ignorantly, i.e. without knowledge, and making them hastily, hardly ever leads to a good outcome. So I encourage you to be patient, encourage you to research a little more on why we're having to recuse those that seem to have the experience necessary to voice our concerns. And then finally, thank you for your service to this community. Because I know this is not easy. I know we're not paid well to be here, but it's good to have folks that care, sir. So thank you very much.
Mark Collins.
Seven years going on, resident of Gillespie County. I'm a registered builder in this city. Several years ago, I built a wedding event center outside of town. And one of our problems years ago was we have no place to stay in town. We have to go to Kerrville or somewhere else and rent a bus to come out here to have a wedding. Be a builder and a developer for more than 30 years. I saw a need and I tried to do it. And that was SDRs. And we sold the wedding event center. I've built now 2 SDR communities. And my investors that buy these units love Fredericksburg. I don't know anybody that would spend money in a town in real estate in a town they don't care for. They want this town to thrive and be successful and a nice place to visit. I've been coming to Fredericksburg for years. I love it out here. I couldn't wait to semi-retire in Austin and come out to Fredericksburg. But when I came out here, I started working again because I felt the need there. And for the life of me, I don't understand the hatred for SDR. I just don't understand. Over $7 million in real estate in SDRs in Fredericksburg now. And they're specifically built for SDRs. Investors buying them. Their investors are small business people. It's a business. When they buy an SDR, that's a business. And they're providing a service to the tourist industry that y'all advertise to bring the people here. People in Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, they want to come to Fredericksburg, stay in a hotel on the second floor. They want a small B&B house or condo or something. You know, you're fighting something that you're promoting people to come out here, people wineries, go to restaurants. But, you know, I just think that this one thing will comment. Yeah, you recuse the people that know the knowledge. It's been said, and I agree with all that. Because they have some interest in it, and they might gain from it. Well, what's the other side of the coin? The people that don't work together.
That's Ms. Braggins.
Good afternoon, or evening. My name is Leslie Sprague, and I'm a resident of Fredericksburg. I'd like to commend you guys on citing the 4 people in the room who have the most knowledge about this issue. If your goal is to have only one side of the issue heard, then you have accomplished that goal. Congratulations. I do not believe that this ordinance is a reflection of the SDR task force and all of their hard work. Some of the largest items in the proposed ordinance were not even discussed in the task force. One thing never discussed was repealing the 5401-22 ordinance and replacing it with this one in entirety. This is an insult to the previous council, the P&Z, and all who worked on that for a full year plus. In my opinion, the most pressing concern is the transferability of permits on sale. As written, the owner's permit be transferred from one sale under special requirements to the new owner to transfer the permit and now such to be non-refundable. Purchasing and owning a property with an active SDR permit becomes at a great cost. Just securing the property alone is hard enough with the elevated prices that must be paid, many times way over asking. And the fact that hundreds of thousands of dollars have to be sunk into these properties to make them even means that the STR owners have a very large amount of money invested in these properties and very large loans to prove it. The only way for these mortgages to be able to make these mortgages is short-term rent. Long-term is not even an option because who can long-term rent for $8,000 a month? No one. Also, our taxes are 25% higher than our neighboring properties. So that's another expense. If the property is not allowed to be sold as an STR, then the value considerably drops. We purchased under a set of rules that allowed us to STR. We did so in good faith. We've tried to follow the rules to the best of our ability. However, if we cannot sell this to someone that can then sell it as an STR, then our value gets diminished. Sure, the next person can buy it. They're fully aware it's not transferred to STR. But because of that, they didn't pay us as much money as we could get if they could sell it as an STR. Therefore, I will be harmed. According to newly passed Senate Bill 929, any person who purchases property is going through a zoning change must be compensated. And I want everyone to be aware that the city has to compensate all of these homeowners. It's going to be a very large burden on the city and its taxpayers. I remember Councilman Klein, Watson, and Councilwoman Kirchner stating during their campaign that they did not support Sunday and would not, and they would support grandfathering existing SDR property. I'm hoping that that has not changed. As property owners and city residents, we put our faith in city leaders that stand by their word. And we ask you today to retain non-conforming use of SDR and to secure the ability to transfer permits to subsequent owners from all Fredericksburg property owners.
Chris Trevino.
But then, when down in Harrison, he was born in 95, we had friends and family that live here. So, this is the future. He is our future. That's why he was elected by not only existing people in this room, by others that couldn't make it because it's a national holiday. We've left a large metropolitan city that we lived in for 30 years. When we got there, the population was 65,000. When we left, it was 43,000. 3 high schools, just growing like crazy. Still a great community, long families and ties. That was our first home. We decided to move here after our kids finished college, got married, Lots of land out here, currently have a home umbrella. Rules are, I can put a B&B on it, I can put an STR. What's being done here makes correct my future rights when it's my property to do with. I purchased this, worked tireless for it, and I also leave it to my children. It's their future home, and it's named legacy with my surname. What are they gonna battle against? And who's making the decisions for them? This is a complete biased forum when the ones we elected to represent us, as constituents, can't even sit at the table. And nobody backing them up with a second.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. This is absurd. You're not listening to the people. There's a reason why, how many had to recuse themselves? 4 or 5. How did they get there? There was a reason. They're representing us, and this is the future. My children are gonna have that. I'm not being random. They're gonna be listening here. Generations. This is your future generations. Thank you.
Jeff Hill?
Hello, my name is Jeff Hill. I'm a resident of Fredericksburg, a homeowner, and I'm an SDR. Both. Refusal to me, both should be in play here. One of the main reasons I came to Fredericksburg, and we'll call it Freddie, because I've been here 4 years now, are the people, the love, the acceptance of the people, uniqueness of the architecture. This town is very unique. Any other town in this state, and I'm getting older than us. We saw and heard in the last few meetings, we've lost that crown jewel to outsiders. I'm highly concerned that we're going to lose the overall architecture in this town because of some of the things y'all are noting. When you talk about cost, benefit, and overall cost of rehabbing some of these older homes, I'm spending way more than if I could tear it down and build something new. And that's where I see us heading. All the investment in this town that I see around my neighborhood in the historic district are people that are using some of the funds from SDRs to pay for it, like myself. I do plan on living in the house, but right now I can afford to because I have all the costs that it took to rehab it. These homes were built, this town was founded on Sunday homes that people paid in, and now you're trying to throw it away. I've met them in Florida and Alaska. I've gotten a good understanding of their history and the history of that house. I've toured it. I'm rehabbing it. But I see planning and zoning allowing houses to be segregated, tore down, 6 more houses built. Y'all are focusing on a lot of wrong things. My neighbors that are anti-SDR are very accepting of me and what I'm doing because I've talked to them. I've been a good neighbor. And we are doing it together. They know what my key goal is. Y'all need to get your hands out of that and allow people to do the right things and protect what we've got. Our next room to go is the historic district. The cost to rehab these, y'all know, some of y'all don't even live in the historic district, y'all live in anti-SDR, and y'all live in new houses outside of it. I'm investing money at a loss to make this town and keep this town what it is. That's why I came here. Please reconsider. And all these people that volunteered and did all the things they've been doing the last 2 years, as y'all all work so hard, don't all of a sudden change it. Now, there's over 500 new hotel rooms in the next year or so in construction or in planning that y'all have approved. 500 hotel rooms, that's not what people come here. This is the uniqueness. My house in Dallas has a Hampton Inn right down the street. The police don't even go there anymore. Because there's so much stuff going on there, they don't even go. Please protect What we got here is very unique, and please consider everything that y'all did not do with the hospital and save this town. Thank you.
Tim Vasca? Did I butcher that appropriately? Correct.
Bushy.
Okay, Bushy.
I'm Tim Bushy, thank y'all for your service, but I've been a resident 2.5 years and love it. And I just found out today about the meeting, and my concerns were, if you can't park on the street, is it just FTR, or is it everybody in Fredericksburg that can't park on the street? And if 10 o'clock lights out, is it 10 o'clock lights out for everybody in Fredericksburg? Is the airport gonna shut down? Are the bars gonna shut down? When is it gonna, where is it gonna stop, and how are we gonna determine that? And that's my, then I also have, my in-laws are moving down, and they have a house that has a transfer permit, which eventually my wife will get. But then it won't be able to transfer for that. So I'm just, they bought a $1.3 million house that is worth $300,000. And after there's no permit allowed. So I just think whatever's good for the goose be good for the gander. You can't just single out STRs. It should be, if you're gonna make the rules, it should be good for everybody. This is the STR. Thank you.
Greg Wasaki.
Greg Wasaki, resident on West Travis. And I'm going to approach this from a different standpoint. From a loss of tax revenue that y'all face, if you throw out at least half of the SCR over time, and you can't do it overnight, but the long-term goal is to get rid of these. You throw out half of them, the loss of the HOT revenue will be close to $1 million a year. That's a lot of money. Also, property tax values. We've heard from several real estate agents here saying the values of property have gone down. That's easily worth 25 to 50%. And let's say it's going to be $100,000. And it's not just going to affect the Airbnbs, it's going to be affecting every resident. And the loss of that will be in the millions annually. Because even if you raise taxes because of the loss of revenue, you're going to have people losing their jobs. You're going to have businesses closing because you're not going to have tourism in here like you are experiencing right now. And my calculation is that conservatively, like I said, the HOT pack will be $1 million, property taxes will be, just for the city portion, will be $1 million. For the school, it'll be $5 million annually. So how are you going to sit there and pay for all that? Tax increases. That's why I said no brainer.
Tyler O'Brien.
Tyler O'Brien, I am not a resident, I do own property in Fredericksburg, and I do STR. I'm kind of confused when we get these emails, because I think everybody feels like we're confused. 2 years ago, we were sitting here discussing problems with STRs, and the solution I thought was made by the ordinance passing. And then we get another email about an amendment and another amendment. Instead of focusing on what you feel like you want to have, focus on improving what you do have. Because right now, with the current ordinance, I don't know if anyone's trying to renew their permit, you can't get online, you can't get anything, you have to get on the phone with Gina. That's a mess right now. The other thing is on my STR specifically, I'm a home builder. So I bought it with the intention of renting it for a few years and then building a large home. Bringing in somebody to make it a time resident, which is what you guys say you want. But you have an ordinance written in the zoning ordinance that doesn't allow me to do that. So you've got something that should be focused on and revising those types of ordinances instead of trying to write something that we've already agreed on. Because right now it's almost impossible to get a new SPR permit if you don't have it. So what about this amendment like an SPR? Or what about the initial ordinance is not working? We haven't even given it time, but you know, there's no.
Mike Mahoney.
I'll pass.
Yeah. Greg Andrews.
We're gonna be okay. There's Greg Andrews. Please don't kick me out of here. Ladies and gentlemen, and I have a lovely wife who is the family of the next 7 generations, the original founders, student and here. Fredericksburg is been not just a saying, but a home to us. I'm very used to that. Single girls in school, 2 teenage daughters. But we've always stayed at home here because we're coming down to this moment. Coming down to 1996, the whole time of the year. We decided to buy a cigarette. We did this, no one, no you. And what we formed, we and when we bought that lease, it was in a totally dilapidated condition. We invested nearly as much as the purchase price of our home to rejuvenate her. And like everyone here, like everyone in the food, I'm not going to talk about all the economic factors that other speakers talked about, which I believe in, but I would like to bring perhaps a perspective. I understand the issues with the total problem as females. I would not want to be a neighbor here, resident here, and deal with bad items. Either owners of SDRs, yes, but what I would submit for your consideration is that is a vast exception, and I'm going to be on it. The vast majority of SDRs, I believe, are residents. We have met our neighbors, they embrace them. And where in town they bring us in, we let their families there. We don't like it. Not just the doors, having to pay up. I don't know, just. And appreciate the problem and the rest of my life. But I think you are bringing forward punitive responses to the majority of the responses. I submit to you, you're trying to bring the proverbials, the you see this. And that's consider that please.
And finally, Jill Tabor.
Jill Tabor, owned 2 short criminals. I currently do not own any anymore. I want to say, Catherine, I appreciate the facts of the real estate market right now. I think with the COVID crisis over, people and a 7% plus interest rate, no one is running to buy a short-term rental in Fredericksburg. From my perspective and from the real estate perspective, it seems like the demand for rentals is down. So I think my question with the new proposed changes is what is the purpose? Is it to create affordability? Is it to protect the neighborhoods? It is both. But the current ordinance doesn't really allow any new permits, which is great. I think it's great the way that the council designed it, where anyone who has a permit has a permit, we're not getting new permits. I think I have a concern with the transferability. Because even if you transfer one owner, but not the second, and the sense you're taking it from the first. Because any educated buyer is going to make a question from rental. If they know, but when you want to sell, you can't sell it. So that is my concern, and I think my question is, what is the purpose of that part of the proposal for the minutes? And is there any way to achieve the goals and the purpose without taking away the transferability? I appreciate it. I know you spent a lot of time listening to a lot of people. So I appreciate you being here tonight.
All right, it is 10 till 7. And I'm going to call for about a 7-minute recess. Give you some time. Folks, you're perfectly willing, allowed to stay, and I know you know that. I just wanted to know. I hope you'll feel like you can stay and listen to the deliberations if you like. Thank you for your being here. I've learned a lot from your comments and appreciate it. But I will ask that since we have quietly and respectfully listened to all of you, that as we deliberate, you keep your comments, your applause, anything else to yourself, because we're now going into a business session, and our discussion needs to be open and free and transparent in open session. So I invite you to stay. We will break for about 7 minutes, and I will call the meeting back to order. Will you do the same? All right. Thank you. Here, ladies and gentlemen, thank you, audience, if you take your seats.
Yeah.
So I just have to just basically. Item 3A, which is where we've been. Public comment, consider proposed short-term rental amendments to the zoning ordinance. Discussion followed by legislative update on STRs and next steps. Any general comments before we get started relative to comments you've heard, or new thoughts, or what you'd like to address? And P&Z review reconvene. All right. I'm open to general comments and discussion with regard to this document before us.
I'm just curious what we're trying to get out of tonight. Are we going to go by the ordinance line by line? Are we going to talk about bigger concepts? Like, how should we organize our discussion?
Well, I have a general question for council, and P&Z, feel free to jump in too.
I would assume we would go line item in discussion. It'd be my suggestion.
That's great. I think it makes sense. I think when we started this whole process, we talked about the need for enforcement And so that's been addressed in moving.
Yeah, so there you can be heard.
I'd like to know a little bit more about how things are being enforced, if we need specific changes on those items for enforcement. And then there was the permitting issue to see where we are in improving that process. And then the ordinance as well. And we can go through that line by line.
Okay.
I guess, Anna, would you have an update on that?
So since we last met, code enforcement has been moved to the police department. So it's no longer coming directly through, development services. The code enforcement officers are still conducting the on-site inspections and so letting our STR specialists know if there's going to be some property fails an inspection. We're working more closely with the finance department, especially the HOT. We have just say this too, we have a new STR specialist position that's been in place since November. So that's obviously improved the number of permits that we've been able to process a month, keeping up with the renewals and the new. And then we also, the city hired a finance person dedicated just to HOT collections. So that's improved as well. So I feel like on kind of the administrative side, we've made those improvements on personnel, and made improvements where we could. The database, the software, the situation has not yet been improved. We're still working on it with a new company, but that the permitting process is still very cumbersome, I would say, for applicants. But Jan's doing a great job working very directly one-on-one with anyone who's having issues. So I think enforcement's been improved. Permitting is continually improving.
So, some time ago, we talked about how many, and I realize every month more and more are coming due. How's that transfer or I assume there's no new R1 applications?
Correct. I think in total, we seem to say maybe a handful of new R1s. The majority of the new permits, even I think a total of 20, those numbers is still very small as far as brand new permits. The majority of what the office is processing are renewals and then transfers. And transfers is that one big job.
Let me ask you on the renewals, and are we actually doing inspections on those? Or if they have, one time we talked about it, they had no complaints or anything, that just finish the application and pass it on through.
Sorry. Cool. Hello, everybody. I'm Jan. We're not doing, inspections on the average renewal unless a renewal has any kind of violation or there's been any modifications to the property. So that's sped that back a lot too. And then transfer is required inspection. So we do an average right now of about 10 SDR inspections a week. Because now we're going to them to Wednesdays only. And so it's very consolidated, and we did 10 last week. We've got a lot of this. Wednesday is pretty full. We're looking at about 2 weeks for inspections on STRs.
And as far as renewals, I think last time we met, there was about a 9-month backlog on permit renewals. Where are we now? We caught up?
I'm happy to say I am processing April of 2023. It's come a long way, yeah.
We're still waiting on it, yes. A software solution, is that right? Okay. Okay. So as far as what to accomplish tonight, Emily, P and Z, where are you? How were you left at the last meeting, April the 18th? What was your understanding of what tonight was about? Let's get that out.
We felt like we were gonna go back over the changes and just revisit where that was, and we don't mind making the new changes.
Yeah.
Is that order? We thought like
What'd you say?
Well, I don't know, from the drones and do resident.
Really 50 years November. So I believe that. So when we last met, I really didn't expect to see the ordinance that I received, the copy this morning. I didn't expect to see this. Where it's written. My personal feeling is that I believe the ordinance that was passed in April of 2022 was a good ordinance. I was very much something spoke to my thought, the previous council and members of the planning and zoning commission, members of the community spent an awful lot a long time thinking about it and doing their diligence in ways that the community. My feeling is that because of a lot of issues that the city had in enforcement, that the ordinance that we've had has not really been given a chance to show how effective it is. And I believe that we owe it to the previous council and citizens that spent time on that to, if it's not working, fix it. And I don't know that we've given that ordinance time to show whether it's good or whether it's bad. I think there are other issues going on with it.
Someone else? Tim?
My primary concern on this issue at this point in time is why we think that we want to be the test for the state of Texas or for the United States. I feel like this type of thing is going to be contested in a higher court someplace else other than Fredericksburg, maybe Austin, maybe Washington, who knows? But for once, I think maybe we ought to not be the leader on something like this. Our taxpayers are going to spend an awful lot of money defending lawsuits if we don't get this right, and I'd much rather let somebody else pay that bill.
Are you recommending we suspend the whole process?
No, sir, I am not. I'm just saying that we should continue to be diligent and watch closely what's going on in the legislature and see kind of where it's going. Anna sent us something this week about what happened in Dallas with R1s. So we're not the only one that have these problems, but it's a question of the large communities think they have a problem, but we've really got one because of our popularity, like everybody in the room said. And of course, we've invited that, and I understand that. But I'd like to see somebody else pay the bill.
Well, if I agree with you, so then what? How do you want to proceed? Because one option is to say, we believe that there are too many things for us to navigate through this. The question that was asked tonight often, which is a very astute question, is, I think it was Jill Faber, what's the point? What's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? Where are we moving from A to B to C to D? Because we don't have the data, do we, to say the 2022 ordinance has completely failed, so we have to have another run at it, or that it's even partially failed, we have to have another run at it. The whole attempt on my part was to address what I believed was there were some gaps in the regulation of 2022. I was not wanting to completely trash 2022. I got clarity on that tonight, and I'll take it. It's my responsibility. I should have known. But I didn't intend for us to take 2022 throw it in the trash and start over. What I was thinking was that we would take 2022 and amend it or add to it, revise it. I'm speaking only for myself, and I'm not blaming anybody else. I'm not looking at anybody else who had a participation in the process. I'm saying that that was my gap. Because I thought we just were going, and that was the point of the task force. The point of the task force was to say, where could we fix this a little better? Because we had a rash of problems. I'm disappointed that we don't have anybody speaking on that tonight, because we heard a lot from people who said STR's neighborhoods, belligerent actors, loud, this, that, trash, water, lights, parking, obscene things on their cars, all that sort of thing. We heard that. But they're not coming to this, and they're not saying.
No, the industry is, you can bet on that.
The appropriate interested industry is doing that, but we're not hearing from the other side. I'm not.
Well,
are you all?
We all live in neighborhoods, and I want to address the parking issue for just a minute, because it's something that we all experience. Drive up and down the streets during the week through the residential neighborhoods, and it's relatively peaceful. There aren't very many cars parked on the street anywhere, much, that aren't there every day anyway. But on the weekend, there's 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 cars parked around one house. And it's not just one house, but it's 4 or 5 in my neighborhood alone. And I guarantee you they are all over town. Okay? So therein lies the issue with parking, in my opinion, is that the neighbors who live next to those houses are fed up with what's going on weekends, and they have absolutely no control over it. So they come to you and us and say, fix the problem. Well, I don't know that we know how to fix the problem, because they have the capacity, they have the density that they need, and they just don't have any place else to park. Is limiting parking to on-site only a solution? I don't think so, because there's just not enough dirt for what we have already. So I don't have the answers either, but I know that the good people of this community outside of the industry have some legitimate concerns about things like parking, things like lights, and I would like to try as best I can, with my understanding of dark sky provisions that the city has in place, to make people in this room understand that this city, by choice, is a dark sky city. And what I'm thinking of in terms of lighting after 10 o'clock is those nice little bare bulbs that you see hanging behind everybody's patio. I have one in my neighborhood that I can see out of my front door at 10 o'clock at night. That's what we're talking about. Those lights are not dark sky compliant. In every neighborhood that we have, new construction or otherwise, commercial and residential as well, with dark skies, we now make people shield the light fixtures so that the light goes down, not out.
And that's all over in every zoning district.
That is correct. That is correct. And it is a city ordinance that we passed some time ago, and I think it's working. Ask anybody in the business will tell you, contractors or people that build homes, they've got to have the shielded lights. So those are the kind of things that, in my opinion, are misconstrued sometimes.
Well, then council and P&Z members, I need you to speak up. I mean, Emily, we can go along the line if you want, but I'm talking at a higher level right now about the whole purpose point of this, because we're only hearing in this meeting from one side. Every speaker was from one perspective. And so it's up to us then to say, well, okay, but we're here looking at this. Why are we doing this? And I heard from a lot of neighbors. I mean, through the year that I've been mayor, year plus. I've heard from a lot of people about their neighborhood, the content and character of the neighborhood, the upward escalation on housing prices because of the market of SDRs, et cetera. I take the message that I got tonight from people in the real estate business who say that may have been true a year ago or 6 months ago, whatever, but that is not now. I can believe that that's true. But I'm needing my fellow council members to tell me, where are you on this? What are you hearing? What do you think? Do you want to just suspend the process until we know more and more things have happened?
Mayor, you bring up a good point. I think when I think about who I represent the residents of Fredericksburg. That's who I answer to. Of the emails that we got today and yesterday, 70% of them were people from out of the county who were investors here. The people that were local, most of them were realtors. So I get that angle. As I look at this and I think, what is the problem we're trying to solve? I think we need to enforce our rules. Can't do that, don't make the rule. We need to clean up our permitting timeline. That I know we prioritize that and it's slow, but there we are. Increased transparency. I want that map. I'm just gonna keep talking about that. I'd like a map because it is, I think it's better than it was, but we still need to know who is where. And then finally, just making our ordinance easier to understand. It was torture going through that process on P&Z last time around, the 107 pages. We should have it be something simple that non-lawyers can understand. That's what I would like to do. And that's what I thought we were going to be doing in having a red line of our old ordinance. Now, this is a complete rewrite and it is succinct, and I love that it's only 19 pages, but it's also a whole new set of language. So figuring out, okay, can we pull out the language from our 107 page, make it a separate ordinance so it doesn't have to be so complicated, and have something online to guide people through it. If the ultimate goal is to limit the number of STRs, then why don't we just make a number and say this is the cap? Because this is a whole lot of extra work if that's what we're trying to get to. That Dallas story said that Dallas has 1,000 permits, so we have over 1,000 permitted, and we're much smaller than Dallas. So it's a different character for sure, but I just think we need to make sure that we have a problem in mind that we're trying to solve.
Well, the point of the joint meeting, obviously, is that we didn't want to do anything that put P&Z in a situation where, well, we wish the council would have done this, because you're the one, the first stop for all of these projects. And by the way, I want to correct something. There are not 500 hotel rooms in the works that we have approved. There may be some talk about it, or is there?
Not that many.
Okay. 409. Sorry? 409. 409. Okay. Never mind. That we approved, is that hotel hour?
No, that's all of it, in aggregate.
Yeah.
Aggregate, all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no.
So far.
Okay, pause just a second, because I did this with a mouth off, I want to make sure. Sorry?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, a little bit louder. Than your ratings.
105.
How much?
105.
105, where are the other 300? Immigrants, 8.
There were 3 new hotels that were approved at planning and zoning on friendship land at the last meeting.
Yes. Oh, those were approved the next day. Okay, that's the 300. I mean, that's the extra. Okay, all right. So there was a project over behind. All right. Now I got it. It was the last P&Z meeting, so that it was just 2 weeks ago. Okay. All right. So 400. But the point of the P&Z joint meeting was what it said. So it wasn't for us to come together as a council, make sure the council to come together tonight to say, okay, we're moving on. We got this done. It's a wrap. Let's move on. We got a new amendment. I mean, new ordinance. That was never in my head to do. And I was just hoping we could schedule another meeting soon to get an update. And I understand that it fired up some passions here, rightly so. But that was never the intent. The intent was just to have one more meeting with these guys and say, what do you think next? And then we go on. But we are the elected officials and we're in charge of the process, so it's on us completely. So I take that responsibility. But now I want to know where to go from here. Tony, give me your thoughts on this.
Well, something I've thought about for some time now, and I keep wondering about our zoning, because we've got R1s within the historical area, And I'm not so sure that maybe we need to look at some of the zoning. And I agree with you, and I think we pretty much, the R1's been taken care of in the previous deal. So that's not so much a concern. I understand about the transfer, and that needs to be looked into. I'm kind of I've got one on each side of me at home, and I don't have a problem with it. And so, you know, there are good players out there, and certainly a few bad players. But I'm also not sure why we would want to limit anybody to more than 30 days short-term rental. You know, it's a rental house. I mean, so I'm not sure how that all of a sudden came in there. And of course, it makes sense that one night, but I realize some of these things are written in and thrown in there. I'm almost on the verge here saying that R2 in most cases. If there's not, you know, if there's problems with them, then we have a way to apparently take away their permits or penalize them. So the other part of that is I'm still real concerned that we don't have a good fix on this. We heard it tonight that apparently just to get in and do a renewal or anything, still not working. We've been working on that for a year now. So I'm a little, you know, I agree with you from a point that there may be some little teetering we need to do, but I'm not so sure I'm not so sure we haven't taken care of some of the issues now. Because apparently, the R1 deal, which was my biggest concern, the neighborhoods is settled down. Kind of taking care of itself.
Bobby?
I was involved with the 2022 ordinance. It's huge, and it's written with the zoning ordinance. My hope with this was to possibly make an STR ordinance that was simple to understand, that was simple to manage, not only for staff but also for the public and the people that have STRs. We've gotten better at enforcement. I think transferring it to PD has helped a lot. I think there's still a lot to be done. One of my comments tonight was going to be, if we need more people, whether it's staff or whether it's PD, we need more equipment. We're entering into our budget process. Let's put that in there. But I don't think we need to make big changes until we have data, and we still don't have the kind of data we need. I mean, as Jan just said, we're working on April 2023, which is a heck of a lot better than it was 6 months ago, but we're not current, and we can't take care of the ones that are wanting to renew now or to even transfer permits. So before we start really trying to change stuff, let's take care of what we've got now. And then if there are issues, then I think we can change those. I would like to see a simpler ordinance. I would like to see that we go after the bad actors with vengeance, because they're the ones that are giving good STR owners a bad name. So that's where I am.
So Bobby, you say that new ordinance that you would like to see is not there?
I don't think so. If we could, I think it would be difficult to take the ordinance we have and make it into a simpler document, because it's so intertwined with our zoning ordinance. And maybe we have a separate STR zoning section, and then we have a STR operating ordinance. That's a thought, but.
Well, all right, so you mentioned the format, the simpler, I've heard you say, I've heard everybody say simpler and so forth. You're talking about format, the outlay, the layout, the way it's worded, and so forth, which has to fit certain parameters because that's the way zoning laws have to be done in a municipality by state law.
Correct.
Okay. What about the substance of the things that we've been talking about that have been raised here tonight with regard to transferability of permits one time and then none, which is a sunsetting. Is that a right? Is that a bad term?
Let's get some legal terms.
Did I say the wrong thing?
You can use that term, Mayor. It doesn't, it's not exactly, maybe you can everybody understands what it means.
Okay.
Thanks, but
Then I won't use any terms.
we wouldn't write that in the ordinance,
Okay.
but you can use.
I don't want to be incorrect. The transferability wording in this amendment to be discussed and debated is passing it on one time and the next, because it takes care of everybody that bought into the system anytime 2022 and 2023 before this goes into effect. That's the thinking anyway. And then, but they can't sell, the buyer knows that they can't transfer it. Parking, which you've mentioned, is there any way to address those neighborhood concerns that have, I mean, it can be a good thing to be in a neighborhood and have just the streets lined up all weekend, all the way around. And I have seen, regardless of what we've been told, I have seen them. Because I hear about them and I drive by and see them and somebody says, come look at my house. Okay, that's not to say that every STR owner is bad, irresponsible, or doesn't do the right thing, but it does say that it is because of the convergence and the concentration of STRs is a problem. Trash, okay, I've gotten some naughty pictures about trash and so forth, that I think that's probably taken care of. Watering, because when there's an absent landlord or an absent owner, they turn their system on, you know, and people get annoyed because, well, we're in stage 4 and I'm, you know, I can't, my neighbor is an STR and so forth. So there are those issues. I don't know how prevalent, I just know that they're. But in regard to by the way, the lighting thing, wasn't that supposed to go with the regular ordinance for people? I mean, we weren't setting aside anything unusual for STR for
No,
the lighting.
we were just trying to be dark skies.
Right, so the question is, does everybody divide by that? Is yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
But the problem is, I think, Mayor, is that the enforcement sometimes is selective.
Oh, okay, because they know it's an STR, let's pack them.
Well, but the other thing is, they don't go into places like my neighborhood where there aren't any STRs, but you've got lights.
Okay, so.
And if you don't want to rat out your neighbor, what are you gonna do?
Okay, so they stand out by practice.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, but the substantive thing, and I'll stop there, transferability, parking, lighting, and is there any other big one? Are those things that you feel like we can just pause and wait until we get better? I mean, do you feel strong enough about them right now to move ahead on them? Tell me, give me your sense.
Well, one thing on parking, I do appreciate that the tandem parking is only permitted for a maximum of 2 vehicles deep. I think that's what I get concerned about when I go by a house and they've got 3 and 4 deep in the parking, in the driveway. But yeah, I would like to know, outside of Fredericksburg, which has allowed transfers for a long time, is that the norm in other cities? Or is the norm for the permit to not transfer with the home? Can anyone speak to that?
The norm is not transfer. It is abnormal to allow transfers. The only other city that I've been able to find close by that allows transfers is New Braunfels.
In perpetuity, from owner to owner, owner to owner. I mean, there's no, is that what you're saying?
Yes, just by, I mean, and these things are complicated, and this is significantly less than the 2022 version. I don't think it threw it out with the bathwater. I think it's in there, baked in. But Rachel, the attorney that wrote it, is on the line. So if you have any specific questions, you know, if we didn't get it right, the whole point of this was we do have the tracking sheet. We followed the conversation up to this point. So if there are concerns like the parking, if we didn't quite get it right, I think that's what we're ready to discuss. That's not exactly what I thought we said. So we can get it right. But no, transferability for the abnormal one.
Could I add something to that? And excuse me, when you start comparing cities and regulation of STRs, some cities have old regulations, and many, like we did here for decades, apply the bed and breakfast regulations to them. And so the latest generation of STR regulations, say those that have been passed in the last 18 months, do not allow transferability.
Do not allow.
Do not.
On homes that are currently functioning as an STR.
Correct.
So it would apply to all, not just new permits.
The interests that are served by that are, then you have the local or emergency contact is renewed to the right person, and it's done quickly so that there's not a gap for tenants or residents to know who to call and so forth. And also that it's subject to inspection, which is very important from a fire safety standpoint.
Okay, so I have a question there. With the transferability, you say that most communities are not allowing transferability.
Correct.
But then do those communities also allow the issuance of new permits?
Yes, it would be a new application.
Because the issue, it seems that one of the issues here is that permits are not being allowed to be transferred and no new permits. The new owner could not apply for a new permit.
Well, I think what you're asking is, had there been changes in the law and the local ordinance related, like they just had in Fort Worth last week, actually, to eliminate all residential STRs. Then they couldn't transfers aren't allowed, and they couldn't reapply because they're not in an appropriate zone district, like we have here as well. So yes, in the most recent versions of STR ordinances in Texas anyway, and that would occur.
So I guess the question here is that what is that was we were trying to do the beginning.
What's the question? Wait, what? Say that again.
Is that the elimination of SDR? Is that what we're trying to do?
No.
Okay.
No.
Then I'll go back to my question here. We're saying we can't I am an SDR, I can't transfer when I sell it. But can the person who buys it apply for a permit? And they just said that.
Well, if it's in an appropriate zone district, as has been defined by and the ordinances are never drafted to eliminate the use, it's to address that negative secondary effects.
So I think what we haven't addressed is where do we as a community feel SDR social?
Past council wanted them in R2 because they left R2 to be by right, and R1 had the restrictions on it. So that was passed, but now R2 is what, 38% of R2 is STR? Give or take?
We're 218 active.
How much?
Of 218.
218.
Out of how many?
See, how many total?
Yeah. I mean, how many?
In R2.
Six.
We have 367 total, 218 are actually active, 51 are pending, and I have 32 pending under review, and I have 39 not permitted. So.
And are these are in Washington neighborhood?
Yes.
Okay, these are, okay. And so the issues are something that I've been thinking about is we have neighborhoods. We have an R2 neighborhood, and then we have R2 zoned areas. Okay. From where I live in an R2 zoned area. Okay. But it's not a neighborhood in a traditional sense that here's a row of streets. 3 blocks over where Emily lives, it is a row of streets. Okay. It is a typical R1 neighborhood, like we have North Town, that just happens to be, it's R2.
So to get back to where we want them, I think it would be nice to decide of a specific zone where we wanted to encourage them and let permits continue there. potentially just throwing out an idea, let permits transfer within a certain zone, and then everywhere else, maybe they would have to reapply, go through the special exception process to say, oh, it makes sense, you already have 80% of your homes on your street are STR, so that's an STR area. Maybe it's clustered, I mean, it didn't have to be like a beautiful rectangle, you know, that borders Main Street.
So what I hear you say is that the intentionality toward a district or an area. So how do we get from what we have to that? We're just saying that over time, that just has to organically develop?
You
Okay.
can't force it.
And that was not a challenge.
Yeah, so that's one way, or, you know, like what is written here, 12.5% of a block. That's another way. I think Bernie did it that way, it was specific.
Okay.
So I think that's what we need to agree on, but then is that gonna change with every new council? We're gonna be going back and forth, so.
For what?
Rachel?
I'm sorry, I can't hear the question.
Where did the 12.5% limit come from in R2?
So that number is 1/8 of the properties that operate on a block.
Right.
And other cities that we've worked with, that number was found to be the one that would have a reasonable impact on surrounding areas. And if additional STRs wish to operate in excess of that number, they're still allowed to obtain a special exception if it's appropriate for the area. But that number has been used by, for example, the city of Arlington, which that ordinance was upheld by the Fourth Court of Appeals up here in Fort Worth. So it's kind of our primary guidepost for what's considered acceptable by the court.
So there's a legal angle to that number, okay. And that fits in your mind, Rachel, or your experience, not your mind, your professional experience, that fits. I mean, Fredericksburg is not a one-off in any particular way, that it should be viewed differently. That's a good number for us too, in your opinion.
It depends on the city, and that's kind of a determination that needs to come from you all. I've also done it where we've used a certain number on a street instead. That was for a city with a significant amount of kind of long winding streets. It was more residential, not so much on a block system. That's another alternative. I have a few other options that I've used in the past.
Okay, well, that's what I was wondering is R2 in Fredericksburg similar to those other cities from which that precedent came? Similar enough?
So
Any way to answer that?
Yeah, it's tricky for me to say just because I can't physically visit and see what everything looks like, but just based on my review of the zoning map, it does look like it's on a block structure, which would lead me to think that it would make sense. But I'm more than happy to listen to y'all weigh in on your thoughts on that.
Well, I hope you don't hear me being critical. I am totally asking your opinion from your expertise and from your experience, because I know you've talked to a lot more cities than I have. All right. I'm not inclined to deal with the specifics of this amendment presentation tonight. That's my opinion. Does anybody share that on the council? And the reason is because of the, one is the suspicion from some folks that this meeting was, stealthily arranged and done and so forth. And that is absolutely not the case, but I don't like that impression. We must do a better job of getting the word out and making sure that people are aware of what we're dealing with before we even pose it as a question to discuss. That's my opinion. And also I want to say to those of you still here who spoke, if you know me, if you've ever worked with me personally, you know that I am open to talk with you anytime on the phone. And there may not be a more publicly known cell phone in Texas than mine. And anybody who has talked with me will testify that I listen and we discuss. And because I am an open guy who wants to hear things, but emails not so much, because emails tend to attack and set up your motive. Why do you do this? But talking to people is always a good thing. And I invite you to call me, well, not anytime, but I do have some.
Not at 10.
Right, not at any time. I have dark hours in the sun, sometimes more. But I invite you to speak to me personally about things. I want to hear your perspective and I want you to hear mine. I would like you to devote your energy to being confident in your persuasive power. And I would like to hear less motive attacking and assuming, because I can tell you this, we're trying to do the right thing, but you must know that there are people who are not represented, and I don't know why they don't come to these things. I don't know why that we hear from them here regularly that have a very different view from yours about STRs are not the greatest thing that happened in Fredericksburg. They're not terrible, and I appreciate the investment. And Mr. Hemphill, I agree with you completely about the redoing of properties that make them look really nice in neighborhoods. And I don't dismiss what it costs. I know it's very expensive. And I drive up and down streets and I see a really nice house with a nice landscape, and I go, well, that's really nice. Must be an STR. So I take your point on that. We're trying to do the right thing to find the balance here. My personal opinion is that, and I've been here 27 years, I'm not a long timer, but I've been here 27 years. And my personal opinion about neighborhoods is that the number and the convergence and the speed at which SDRs came into neighborhoods radically changed people's experience of their living. That's just a fact. And we can talk about degree, but surely we can't ignore that there is a downside to a regular neighborhood when you have a lot of unoccupied houses during the week. I'm not looking for Leave It to Beaver or Ozzie and Harriet or whatever the silly analogy is. I'm looking for the 2023 version of what a neighborhood is like now. I don't go out on my porch. I don't have kids riding a bike. I don't have grandkids riding a bike. I know those things are gone, but there is a benefit to people knowing who lives next door to them, across the street, and so forth, in a general context, and that's always been the way Fredericksburg has thought. Now we have a new edition of a different thing, and we have to find a way to navigate that. So you have your interest, but there are people who don't come that also have their interest, and they've been here just as long, and they have relatives here just as many as you do, and their grandmother's house is the same, one people that they think has the same value and so forth. So we're trying to find a way to come together on that. It may be, council, that the best way to go right now is to suspend the process until we have a better handle on this software issue. We have a better track record for enforcement. We have a better way of knowing where we're going to go with this. We answered Jill Taylor's question in unmistakable terms publicly. Here's what we're trying to do and why. So we're not accused of doing something we're not trying to do. Comment.
Mayor, I agree with you on that. Also, the comments that were stated about the current market, the market might correct some of these issues. And I think we need to give that some time. Being, as I stated before, being involved in the 2022, we were hearing from people that grew up here, lived here their whole life, and were no longer part of a neighborhood. One of my favorites is the lady says, I have 60 new neighbors every weekend because she is totally surrounded by SDRs. That's not a neighborhood. That's a hotel. Even though it's different properties, it's a hotel. So, and we heard numerous stories about that. And we can point to blocks that are no longer, they're dark during the week and they're lit up during the weekend. I don't have I do have a position is that I don't like that in neighborhoods. But you're right, 2023 is different than 1985, than 1956, than 2000. And things changed with COVID. But I would like to see us have better data, have online working, so that STR owners can do a lot of their work online and not have to come to the office, which takes time. And that we have better data to make better informed decisions about which direction to go in.
I just want to insert, Bobby, relative to your comment. We thought we had a really fast path to a software solution with the name the company that's remained named that we were involved with for many, many, many months, and finally realized it was going to be a total misfire. And that's unfortunate, but that did put us back. But it's a reality we have to face. So that's another factor. Darryl, you've been mighty quiet. Do you have anything you would like to?
I have a myriad, Mayor.
You start?
I have a myriad of things to say, but it's not that I'm not saying anything yet.
Would you like to?
I'm debating.
Okay.
Because if I were to say some of the things that are on my mind while truthful, would probably be gratefully offensive to many of you in the audience.
Well,
And therefore I'm choosing not to say them at this time, but I will say that following what Mr. Watson said, or Councilman Watson, regarding the issues of the neighborhood and the 60 new neighborhood people. You know, one of the things that we may be seeing, you've spoken, that we're only hearing from those who are in the real estate and short-term rental side. You're not hearing from the old locals. You're not hearing from the people I see in the feed store when they go like that. You're not hearing from the folks who go listen to Wagons to Stance. One of the reasons you're not hearing from them, they've kind of given up. Their town has changed so drastically, so significantly in the last 20 years, 30 years, that they don't feel it's their town. Now, the gentleman called Freddie, yes, it is a cute town, it is a unique town, it is unlike anywhere else you can go. But the fact is, the guys that go by feet at Barron's, people who used to go in the back doors of Dooley's who've done business there for generations, they feel their town has changed beyond the point that it can be carried as their own town. And, you know, one of the ladies that came and spoke off of Highway Street and pleaded with us to try to stop a short-term rental next door. As someone who had lived here a while and made the point that, you know, I'm doing everything with my power legally to try to stop this. And I can't. So the reason you're not hearing from a meetings like this is, A, they probably don't have it on my radar, but B, they've also got to the point that they don't know that the fight, they feel like the fight is lost already to a degree. And for those of you who don't know me, last name is Whitworth, it's English. We have only been ranching here since 1871. I've made this my home for the better part of my 54 years. And maybe I can attest, I spend a lot of time and effort doing community involved things. So I have a pulse of who the people that live here, that have lived here for generations, and the opportunity to speak to them. No, I didn't learn German. My father tried to teach me. It's one of my regrets. But I'm your deputy. Okay, I'm your deputy. I've had some beers. You know what? But then also from a different perspective, I heard a comment out here, and sorry, Mary, you wound me up. Now you can come touch.
All right, go.
I would consider almost a slanderous comment. That those of us who are sitting still on this know nothing about the STR industry. Bluntly, I have made millions of dollars in my life, through taxes, funded from children, period. I work for a nationwide marketing company, and some of our biggest clients have a huge amount of their revenue coming from short-term rentals. As I have spoken to Mick, I intentionally do nothing in this town at this point that has a relation to short-term rentals, because there can never be seen as conflict of interest on my part. From a bigger perspective, you talked about the short-term rentals here in Fredericksburg, the changes of demand, receipt, etc. Jill and the rest of the realtors have spoken to the fact that there are market changes. Folks, what we are seeing here, the market changes we are seeing, are playing out across this nation in the short term. If you're talking to Airbnb, if you're talking to key data, if you're finding out what your demand is for Airbnb, many of your destinations that have seen hugely successful years in 20, 21, and 22 are seeing down. They are getting on the industry post group and lamenting the fact how much their demand is down for short-term rentals. We're not talking 4%, we're talking 15, 18% in some destinations. But that on top of your interest rates and everything else that's going, I think you've only started to see a market correction that's going to take place. And, you know, this is a big 30,000 year picture I deal with every day. So to say that we don't understand STRs,
some of us just don't own STRs in this town, but we understand at a much bigger level. So, there's what I have to say for now, sir.
Darrell, thank you. Anybody want to move anything?
I'd like, may I say something, from the planning and zoning perspective before we get to adjournment or whatever? This ties in directly with what we've been talking about tonight, in my opinion. And I've said this to city staff, and they're trying to work to get us some information. I am really, really concerned that we are getting overbuilt in this community. With all of the things that we have on the books that are in progress, and all of the things that have been approved. Just this week, if you haven't driven by HEB in the last day or two, there's a brand new project that's been on the shelf at City Hall for I don't know how long.
17 years.
17 years,
No.
CAR has had that.
No, that was approved in the summer of 2022.
Oh, I thought that was Ken Carr's thing that he came in 2006.
Yeah.
It's different.
It's different. The last proposal was the summer.
Okay. It may be detailed different, but it's the same,
Well, it's the same site, but my point is,
same reason to scrape the dirt.
well, but again, it's my point that from a planning and zoning standpoint, we see what comes before us on a monthly basis. And it's either approved or it's not, and it goes to site plan, and then it comes back, and then it goes on shelf. We don't know what's behind us. We see what's in front of us, and we don't know what's ahead of us. But I think we are getting overbuilt, completely overbuilt. And I think if somebody said years ago, we ought to have a moratorium. I don't know about a moratorium, but I know we got to slow the train just a little bit so we can catch up. Part of the problem we're having with STRs is that we became overwhelmed with the whole process, and we were so far behind, and we're still behind, which we've been talking about all night long, that we got to slow things down just a little bit and catch up.
So how do you do that?
Well, you give.
Society takes care of it. I mean,
I think that you have to have a concentrated something in mind that tells you that just because it comes down the pike and it looks good, maybe now is not the time.
But it's free America.
Sure it is.
They have a right.
They do. They do.
I mean, we can, it's kind of like the convention center. We denied it. Well, now we hear there's 2 others being planned.
That's right, exactly. And they're outside the city limits, and we don't have a thing to do with
Mayor,
it.
let's interrupt just briefly. We don't really have a.
Something on the agenda
Right.
for this.
I was gonna link this to SDRs, Mac.
Thank you, Mayor.
And just to clarify, Tony, we did not deny, we did not disapprove. We declined to offer them the one chip we asked. Right, incentive, but we knew that they could come back and do that on their own without. Okay.
I
So
apologize if I got off of task, Mr.
I was
McCain.
waiting for him to speak up because I figured that's what's gonna happen, but then you took the SDR, we're home free. Okay. But the whole issue of issues that take us over that we try to deal with after the fact and do it in a fair way, because STR owners didn't break any laws, they didn't do anything unethical, they took advantage of a situation, good for them. That's why many of them are smart investors and do what they do. But what I react against is the notion that there's no downside. That I want to make the most out of my investment. I want to be able to employ people. It pays hot tax, tourism comes in. All of that's true, but there is always at what cost, and that's our job. Emily, you look like you're going to speak.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great point. I wonder if we could direct staff to go back to the 2022 ordinance and tweak the very minor things that we set out to do at first.
Which are in your mind?
I think there was originally, before the task force, I think we asked for, a look at the pool setbacks was unclear, and the local contact person was unclear. There was one other thing, do y'all remember?
You running this, Garrett?
Yes, sir.
I'm
And
for
then
that.
if there's something that was huge from the task force, I'm sorry, I don't have those 16 items memorized, but if there was something that needs to be addressed, you know, could we do a minor tweak? I mean, I would love to pull this out from the current zoning ordinance, is that right? So it could be separate, because I think this is something, it's a living document, and there's gonna be tweaks, and if there's abuses in one area and we need to redo it, without there being huge public outrage, having to go notice every property owner, even those not really affected, I think it would be better if we could simplify that. That would be my request.
I think I understand you too, some of the advertising questions.
Yes, about the permit number not being, it was not clear
There
what
were
we
some
needed.
gaps in the advertisement requirements, okay. All right, well, what I'm hearing is that, there are several things at play that need to be at play and to play themselves out somewhat before we, are able to do anything meaningful. Am I getting that? Is that what okay? All right, well then let's put this to, anything? Are you in general agreement with what I've said, with what people have said? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but because our intent was to aid P and Z in their most important assignment that you have once a month at least and more.
Well, you paid us by allowing us to be part of this.
Yeah, okay.
Mayor, we can go back to the budget and look at the role on section 5.1.
Yes.
And there might be things in there that we want to keep, there might be things that we want to get rid of.
Okay.
But not to eliminate the entire section.
All right. So you want to put that in the form of a motion?
Can I say so moved, like all of them?
Well, the motion was to, take these comments, these discussions, this input, direct staff to go back to 2022 and to insert those things that we've talked about that you mentioned that appear in that ordinance rather than the attempt to repeal 2022.
We don't have any action item on the agenda.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Sorry. So,
Staff direction.
okay. Okay. Is it enough just to say staff direction? Yes. Okay. Is there any SDR legislative updates that we need to know about tonight?
You just told us about Fort Worth, almost.
Well, as far as the state legislature, which we've been waiting to see what happened.
Right.
There were two main bills that were proposed this session that would affect us with our regard to our STRs. In fact, everywhere in Texas, one was a state drafted regulation that we would be limited to using for STRs. It still had a lot of the same restrictions on the operation and location that we have, but it would be much simpler and it would apply throughout the state. That bill did not pass. And then I think you all knew about the bill that would have exempted accessory dwelling units wherever they were in whatever town from any of our regulation, and they could be used for rental or anything else without our approval. That did not pass. There was a bill that passed that's going to affect not only STRs, but every other zoning related matter. If we pass any regulation, and this is for every city, that creates a legal non-conforming use, then we must give notice to the owners of that occurring, all the owners that occurs to, and a possibility of them claiming some right to amortize any lost value, market value of their property. So that's going to take a lot of work to deal with that. And we don't know how that's going to play out yet, but it will apply to any changes in regulations, not only to SDRs, but any zoning changes.
So make the preemption bill, is that for further discussion and coming up in the 89th session?
This SDR preemption bill was almost identical to the one that was in the 87th session, actually. So it's the same one that carried forward, so it probably will come up again.
But it hasn't passed.
Has not passed.
Okay. So is it expected to be deliberated in the special session?
No.
Okay. All right.
It's good for 2 years.
Okay. So we got 2 years to fix this deal, then the legislature can say no. Anything further? Anything further, council?
You guys have next steps. Are we gonna, 30 days out, we can expect to meet again, should we set a time now? What's the next? Once we have a redraft.
I'm good with 30 days out. Does that work? And it's another update, right? It's another update session, with P&Z. Okay.
Mayor, are making those plans. Why the fact that I have an exceptionally busy personal and professional travel July. I need you guys to look and see if I'll be in town.
Okay. Because we said then, let's see, what is this, mid-June? What's the night?
I'd be available then.
Yeah, okay. So, we've got holiday coming up first part of the next month, 2 meetings. We've got budget, comp plan advisory stuff happening, right?
Needs to.
All right, well, let's just do it this summer. Sorry? Let's say 60 days. Is that good?
Works.
Okay, all right. Anything further? We're adjourned.